months knows how nostalgic I am for cartoons us kids of the 70s grew up watching.
That video was a brief synopsis of the history of Saturday morning cartoons, and it was about its great history and eventually what led to its downfall. Well, that was from the perspective of a 1970s kid. But I'm a 1980s kid, but I had a similar experience. And what I wanted to talk about was what I felt were some things that led to the downfall of Saturday morning cartoons. I was on the road and it was the summer of 1995 and I happened to turn on NBC and I said, I haven't seen Saturday morning cartoons in forever. I wonder what's on. And I turned it on and it was teen television shows. And I'm like, what on earth happened? And basically, what I realized was that teen show that I saw many years earlier, Saved by the Bell, that became the entire block. And what NBC decided was we're going to get rid of our cartoons and we're going to have only teen shows. And their tagline was, forget the old and get real with TNBC. And I'm like, no, no, this is horrible. And they had all these like just over the top bad teenage shows. And that just became their Saturday morning block. And what's ironic is, in a lot of ways, that's what happened to music. Like, let's get rid of the things that are tried and true, and let's just focus on children or teen music and nothing else. And oh, by the way, for those of you who are fans of Saved by the Bell, if you haven't seen it, check out Saved by the Bell. The early years, it was the first season. It was originally called Good Morning, Miss Bliss. It was a completely different show. It actually starred Haley Mills. She was the school teacher, Miss Bliss. And you did have Zach, and you had Screech, and I think Lisa was the black girl. But you had them. And the principal, Mr. Belding, he wasn't a clown. So by the time the show got popular, they hired models, and it was all about these pretty, hot high school kids, and Belding was just being an idiot. So they ruined that show. I know it got ratings, but they ruined that show. But anyway, ironically, TNBC was on for a little while, and then it just petered out. Go figure. Now, another Saturday morning block that I wanted to talk about was ABC's One Saturday Morning. Now, I felt that this was sort of the last gasp of Saturday morning program, right? And this is an interesting thing with generations on the internet because some of you are probably too old to know what that is, and some of you may be too young, but I think that you have a small group that was a kid when that was on. Now, what's weird, I wasn't a kid. I was like pretty much college age, but I would turn on the TV on Saturday mornings and be sort of like changing channels. And I would go by ABC and I would see like this One Saturday Morning logo and their jingle that they had. And that's all that I knew, right? That was it. I didn't know the shows that were on. But it wasn't until years later that I happened to stumble upon this One Saturday Morning intro. And it was this intro that they created that started at the beginning of the morning. And first, the music is great. I mean, the music was written by a piano player that knows what he's doing. But it's interesting because it's actually nostalgic, even though I wasn't a kid when that was on. But of course, I mean, Saturday morning is obviously in the words, but the music sounds like the kind of music you would have heard on a Saturday morning. And I can totally see why someone who would have seen that as a kid could be completely nostalgic for that. So if you haven't seen the One Saturday Morning intro, definitely check that out. Now, here's the thing. That only lasted, I think, 2 years. And then it got replaced with ABC Kids. And boy, that was lame. Because honestly, it was people just filling in time slots. What it was were shows that aired on the Disney Channel or Toon Disney, for those who remember that. And it's not even about the ABC Disney partnership, because One Saturday Morning was under that, and it was a lot better because you had cartoons that were only seen on a Saturday morning. The best of those cartoons was Recess. I discovered that later also. But they started replacing it with cartoons or shows that you could see on Disney Channel like later in the day. And that's when I knew that Saturday morning cartoons was over in that moment because it wasn't special. Seeing those years of the 1960s and 70s and 80s and 90s early on, you could only see those cartoons on Saturday morning. A lot of them hadn't even hit syndication yet. So when you saw them, that was the only time that you could see them. And so it was something that was special. And that's why you hear people talking about getting a bowl of cereal and getting in front of the TV to watch Saturday morning cartoons. That's why. But I think that one Saturday morning was like the last sort of true Saturday morning programming. And I think once you had all those other channels like Cartoon Network, and then you started to have Nickelodeon, then you started to have cartoons like all the time pretty much. I think that the uniqueness of Saturday morning was lost. And in the words of that creator, kids today, unfortunately, will not know what that experience was.